Hi, and welcome to the War Bunker. As much as we're fans of films and miniseries like Band of Brothers, The Pacific, and Saving Private Ryan, often Cameron and I will feel a bit of a gap, really, in coverage of World War II in drama. And really, the problem is that most coverage that we can get to watch, or any kind of decent dramatization of, it's almost always from the American side. And obviously, it is actually the Saving Private Ryan syndrome, where it's very hard to see that anyone else was involved in the war apart from America. Um, so, ironically, in our wargaming, there's a company called War Games Factory, and they've produced some excellent models. And we've bought some German World War II infantry, some Russian World War II infantry, and some American World War II infantry. And that's it. That's all the combatants they have. There's a similar problem actually if you play World of Tanks, um, or even World of Warships. It's made worse in World of Warships. You can play as different countries, but not Britain, because Britain's somehow forgotten, even though technically it was the only participants. Um, so there's a huge desire to really see the experience. Because we're British, we want to see the war from our experience. Whilst at the same time, we have an acknowledgement that the whole reason why it was called a world war is it wasn't just Britain, America, Germany, and Russia, and Japan. There were quite a few other things. There was, France did play a part. Poland did play a part because, for instance, the Free Polish were fighting in Battle of Britain and actually in an army for a while throughout the war, not just for a while. India played its part. Um, Hong Kong played its part. China played its part. So I acknowledge a lot of countries did play their part. That's the whole reason why it was a massive war that it was. However, it is kind of frustrating for us that it's so hard to find any kind of film that doesn't tell the story almost as if pretty much America was doing it alone against Japan and Germany. It's kind of frustrating. So, as much as we love Band of Brothers, I've always kind of had this kind of desire for a drama series what I laughingly call the Band of Chums. Pretty much the Band of Brothers experience, but told from the British side. Now, to my absolute shock, there's already a film. Did you know? I certainly didn't. We found this little gem called The Way Ahead on YouTube. We were actually digging around for other reasons. It is um, it is basically a propaganda film, but in actual fact, watching it, it's not as dated as you think. Is very much like Band of Brothers, Full Metal Jacket kind of mentality. A group of quite diverse characters are drafted into the army. They're trained. They think that their drill sergeant has it in for them, and eventually they see their first combat and they come out all right. In actual fact, it's a formula that seems to be used, like I say, Band of Brothers, Full Metal Jacket. It's been used quite a lot. And in actual fact, it doesn't feel too cliched. It's a good film. It was an enjoyable film. There's quite a few characters that you'll recognise. Particularly David Niven plays the typically stiff upper lip officer. But there's a cast of characters that, if you know British TV, that will kind of ring a bell. For us particularly, that one of the reasons we watched this was John Laurie, who plays Private Fraser from Dad's Army. It was in this as a wee young thing, and he's with his Scottish accent. He's still here. What really knocked my socks off me was the drill sergeant that's putting him through the paces is William Hartnell, um, who, if you're a Doctor Who fan, you'll know he's the first Doctor Who. Someone actually spills the tea on him, and then when the drill sergeant puts them through the paces afterwards, they're sure that the drill sergeant is bearing a grudge, and he's a pretty good drill sergeant actually. Now, the film actually had a really important message. It was released in 1944, prior to the Normandy invasions, and a key part of it was the idea that it's mentioned several times that yes, we're winning the air war, but the war isn't over, and it will still require boots on the ground to actually win the war. In a way, it was trying to prepare audiences for the fact that yes, drafting was still going to go. We still had at least another major campaign to go before we defeated Germany, and yes, it would involve the army. We couldn't just win through air power at all. It's interesting because we're still having this kind of discussion now, where we do military intervention abroad, and we think that we can achieve our objectives solely from air power and through intervention. Just bomb to submission. Something that never has worked yet. Well, technically it worked with Japanese capitulation with the atomic bomb. That was a bit unique. But pretty much it's saying, we need as many people as we can, and we do actually need soldiers. That's the only way we're going to get out of this war. The recruits are made up of a diverse group. There's obviously John Laurie, who we spoke about before, as you Scottish people. That's a terrible accent. There's a cheapy, chirpy Cockney know-it-all. There's a guy who works the boilers, a guy who's awfully posh and works in a shop, don't you know? Sorry, my accents are just terrible today. This diverse group of characters who originally kind of go at each other and then eventually go at the sergeant, and eventually they've gelled and they go at the enemy. It was really interesting for us to watch it, particularly from that perspective of the fact that this is basically propaganda. You do notice this because none of the recruits actually die or anything bad happens to them. It is a bit polished, but it is, even the action scenes actually were a bit more thrilling than we thought. We thought they'd be a bit lame, but were pretty cool. And it all ends with them advancing on the enemy through smoke, and a kind of credit scene situation that's very close to what they use from the third season on in Dad's Army. But yeah, very inspirational, good bit of fun, but also films like this, they're interesting to watch because pretty much a little bit like Shapes of Things to Come that we talked about previously, they shaped opinion of the time. They're very much an artifact of the time for the time. We can make a film 50 years on, but it's interesting to analyse what's actually in the film. Again, like we say, the very clear message of don't shirk from recruitment. We need every person we can. The fight's not over. There's a big battle to come. It's going to be the army. We need everyone from every walk of life. Those kind of messages in there, some more blatant than others. I suppose even the friction with the drill sergeant that eventually becomes camaraderie even prepares people for it's going to be tough, But you know what? That's what we need. We need tough soldiers. We need guys that will do everything and get the job done. Um, I highly recommend it. Again, probably like things to come. I will include a link below, but probably some countries this will be available on YouTube. Some it won't because of the in some countries the copyright will have lapsed, and in others it won't. If it is there, I thoroughly recommend you watch it. Watch it first of all with a mind to what happened in Band of Brothers. Secondly, try and look at it as I've said as a piece of celluloid of its time. What is it trying to say? What message is it trying to give people as they leave the theatres? And obviously there is probably compared to Band of Brothers and Saving Private Ryan, there is a slight glorification of war, hence nobody dies, etc. Because it was probably a bit like a recruiting drive. It was preparing people for the fact that they might be called up, and you're exactly the kind of people we need to get the war finished. But all the same, it is it is entertaining while it is being a propaganda film. And it is interesting to see how government use stories like this to get a subliminal message through. It's a good piece of entertainment in its own right as well. Particularly when in watching it, you see an early genesis of films like uh, Band of Brothers, as I said, and Full Metal Jacket. It's got that same kind of everyone comes together, tough drill sergeant, getting it first time in the field, things not going too well, and eventually kind of triumphant. So do watch it if you really enjoy it, or if you really don't enjoy it. Do leave a comment. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Until then, catch you later.